This is the Ask Faleskini podcast, where the modern economy is discussed from a skeptic's perspective. Mr. Faleskini helps you distinguish what is sustainable in our economy and what isn't. Not everything that glitters is gold, and not all mud is dirty. The podcaster Mr. Faleskini provides no-nonsense advice. He had it all, lost it all, went bankrupt multiple times, and is now attempting to come back from zero with sustainable growth. There are numerous coaches and preachers on the internet that preach about positive thinking and how life is all roses if you just care to see it that way. Well, Mr. Faleskini is definitely not one of them. We recommend you ask Faleskini to keep it real. He discusses the darker side of the current economic reality, the side that's more important for your personal and business finance. His first intention is to help you keep what you already have. Not to be a complete party pooper, Mr. Faleskini will also hint at the earning opportunities in the economy today. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please like, share, and subscribe. And now it's time to start taking notes. The mic goes to the podcaster, the one and only Mr. Faleskini.
Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Mike Lane Evans. Mike is one that provides communication training and coaching to businesses, startups, and individuals. Mike, please tell us more about yourself. What's your story?
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me on. And we are Forefront Coaching, so a communication business, as you say, helping businesses of all sizes. I started life as an actor. So I started acting when I was 8. I did that until my early 30s. And for me, what happened was I found myself in a situation through 2016 and 2017 for about 18 months where every audition I went to, every meeting, I was failing. I do loads of practice and I wasn't very good, but more importantly, I wasn't being myself. And what happened was I'd have all this intention, all these ideas of things that I wanted to do and ways I wanted to connect with other people, and I wasn't doing them. And I kind of hit this ceiling. And at the time, I was working with the British military, and I figured out lots of communication strategies and practices working with them that actually helped me align those things I wanted to do with the things I was actually doing. And we did lots of research around this, and we found that there was a study done in the UK, and 83% of people had reported this same kind of feeling, this feeling of, oh, I really want to do these things, but I'm sort of doing these things, or I'm not having the impact that I want to have, or I'm not getting the clients that I want to get. I'm not inspiring the right people. So that sort of was the beginnings of the idea of Forefront Coaching. We started working with startups, with tech startups specifically, where there was huge innovation, idea, growth, but often a lack of successful and authentic communication. And so we started to work with them and help them improve their communication and be more authentic. And then since that, people have approached us from medium-sized businesses and large-sized businesses, big corporations, and also at the other end, just individuals saying, actually, I could really do with some help. Like I have to communicate at work a lot more now. My life is on Zoom and I'm just not doing it that well. So can you help? So that is how Forefront Coaching works today. And there are lots of coaches and we work across the world helping people.
Thank you. That's amazing. I have so many questions to ask you. So, let's start with your acting career.
Yeah.
You started really young, and then you hit the ceiling, as you said, in your 40s. So it was 20 years of success in your career.
Yeah.
How is it possible that you were so successful for more than 20 years, and then you hit the ceiling? Is that something internal? What do you attribute that to?
So it was a few different things. What had happened for me around that time period was that I'd become more successful, and so the quality of the auditions was higher. So I was in that 18-month period, I had 4 or 5 sort of large Hollywood movie auditions. And so there were a few things at play. There was confidence at play. There was kind of uh, imposter syndrome going on about whether I deserved to be in those kind of roles. The way I described it for me at the time was it was like my brain was a cloud and there were lots of things going on. And it was only when I started to spend some time in therapy and coaching and start to disseminate that cloud, I could see all the different things. But for me, the biggest thing in there that I discovered was I never wanted to be famous. And I knew that when I started when I was 8, and I knew it all the way through my acting career that I didn't desire to be famous. And I was then going for these big, big auditions where fame was sort of a part of it. You're going to be in these. And I was sort of self-sabotaging. But I didn't even know I was doing it because I wasn't aligned with what I actually wanted to achieve. And so what we see happen for people and for businesses is sometimes they know very clearly what they want to do, but they're not as aware of their non-verbal body language, their body language, their tone of voice, their eye contact. They're not so aware of their audience, of the people that they want to inspire. And so sometimes they're very clear about what they want, but it's not aligning with the achievements they're actually having. And then sometimes we're seeing what happens for me is I think I know exactly what I want to get, but it turns out I wasn't quite self-aware of the foundation of what it was that I wanted. So that gap can be experienced in a number of different ways for a number of different people. So we try not to be too binary about why it's happening for everybody. We just see that it happens. That gap is experienced by many, many people.
Yeah, I see similar things happening in business when the company starts with initial success and then bigger businesses came and they're not really ready for the responsibility, for the scope, for the grown, let's say, complexity of the operations and all this stuff, and they start failing. But when they go back to smaller businesses, they're successful again.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask you another thing that I still think that's a bit of stigma in our society about it. You mentioned therapy and coaching.
Yeah.
So what triggered you to start? I imagine you had an acting coach before, especially if you were so good as an actor, that there are many coaches available. But what triggered you to go to therapy?
So I'll share a very personal story with you. I was with a girlfriend at the time, and the relationship was very difficult, and it ended up splitting up. She had been through therapy previously in her life, and she was going through a really hard time, and I was encouraging her to take up that therapy again. She talked about the positive experiences of it, how much it had been useful for her, but she wasn't making that link to actually it might be quite useful for me right now. Well, the more this troubled time went on, the more I was not taking my own advice, because actually I realized I was in a situation where I could benefit from some therapy, but I'd never done it before. And so I realized I was being contradictory. I realized I was advising wholeheartedly and lovingly. I was sort of suggesting it for somebody that I loved, but not doing it for myself. And so I made that step, and I did it. I think in the acting industry it's getting a little bit better, but it's very focused on the way you look. And so I've been told many times in my career about going to the gym more, or changing the diet, or the alcohol consumption, all these physical effect things, but less so about these mental effect things. I just met a new startup today that are developing some technology that can start to understand the implications of our mental health from looking at our face, from looking at our skin, from looking at us externally. They can start to give us a mental health score because there are so many physical markers that are brought out by cortisol, by stress in our bodies. So I think in society, we still see a lot of places mental health and physical health as separate things. And for me, I realized, well, I would go to the gym so that I can be fitter and healthier, so I can go and be in a play where I'm running around on stage and still be okay. Actually, if I'm doing a play which is about something very difficult, that's quite a difficult character, then I also need to look after my mental health because they're all part of the same vessel that is or used to be an actor. And if I'm honest with you, I think it's even more important now as a coach, because as a coach, I really need to just be there for the other person, their needs, and I need to be able to focus on them and not bring my own stuff to it. And so I need to kind of be fit and healthy physically and also mentally so that I can do that for them.
Okay. I'm always explaining to my clients that every business problem is just manifestation of a personal problem of one of the stakeholders. And I would like to know, would you agree with that?
Every physical problem is a manifestation of
Every business problem is a manifestation of our personal problem or a personal problem of of one of the stakeholders.
I actually think that's a really deep question. And I think I do agree with it. I'm just playing out lots of scenarios in my head because from a communication standpoint, there are lots of people that, like you said, they're really successful with small businesses, but they're not with those bigger businesses. And why not? And it might be confidence, it might be imposter syndrome, but then, like you said, it's one of their own personal problems that's getting in the way of the success of the business. I also think it's really, we're not encouraged to get stuff wrong and to admit that we don't know. And I think the really successful startups that I see, you've not got a CEO who's trying to be in control of everything. You've got a CEO saying, I know nothing about the technical stuff. And that's why the CTO is here. And I know a lot about business, and that's why I'm here. And we don't try to pretend that we know the answers to questions if we don't know them. Those are the businesses that I see do really, really well. But you've got to put your ego out of the way. You've got to be confident to be able to do that. You've got to believe in the community and the team that you've built. So yeah, I've never ever thought about what you just said. And the more I think about it, the more I think, yeah, I think it's true.
Okay, and now the big blow. And I hope that does not steer you away too much. But would you agree with me that the therapy and coaching for let's say decision makers in the business is probably the best and the first investment that every company should do?
Yes. Yes is the short answer, but I do think it's more complex than that. I met with a company that is focusing on physical health practices specifically for startups. And their idea was if they've received 100,000 in investment, they can easily spend 10,000 of that on their physical health to make sure that they're still running the business well. But that's 10% of your entire business funds. And if you don't spend that money, then actually you've maybe got another 2 months or 3 months of runway where you can think, well, the product won't be quite ready at 12 months. So if I don't spend that on my physical health for the company, I can do, I can stretch it further. And I see that mindset in most startups, not all, but most startups that I meet. They're constantly thinking that the most important thing is build the product and get the clients. And of course, those things are incredibly important. But if you've missed the step before that, you will spend a lot of time trying to get clients and not be very successful. And so I think those businesses starting out that realize, okay, I have a great idea. I don't yet have a great business. So I'm going to go to an expert, to somebody to help me form this so I can put these two things together. And then now, when I meet with those investors, with those potential clients, I will feel a lot more confident because I'm not faking it till I make it. I've built this solid thing. But I mean, it's really hard to get return on investment on that. It's really hard to look back and say, oh, the success of this business is because of that business coaching. So I do, as a coach, I do really believe that's important. But I think ROI on coaching is still something that's really hard to prove. And so not everybody buys into it, I think.
Okay. Would you agree that, for example, the biggest challenge with ROI on coaching, as I see it, is that we are not, everyone wants something tangible in their balance sheet.
Yeah.
And coaching is not backed as, let's say, something tangible that they can say, because you cannot say, like, we are 10% more healthy. We had 5 traumas less in our CEO and 3 traumas less in our CTO and stuff like that. That is not something that would be audited or even in any appreciation model or any evaluation. That's not something that would count. Is that wrong? Should we work more on the intangibles? Should we, when you said the company, they push towards spending their money for 3 or 4 more months instead of building it, as I would call it, more sustainable. And because founders go all in and they just, okay, we do or die. And it's not like that, because there is life after your startup fails. So it's important that even if the startup is a failure, that your mental health and your physical health that do not fail, and that you're still capable of functioning. We don't want anyone that is out of the failed startup to go into depression and all this feeling of inadequacy, because failure is part of this business, and most companies fail, and we have to be aware of that. So pulling the plug in the right time, before we burn, all the people involved are burned out and depressed and not able to function anymore. I think that is extremely important. How would you recommend founders to know when should they stop?
When should they stop?
Stop and say, okay, we failed.
It's a really good question. I think I meet a lot of startups these days that they've had an exit, or maybe they had some money from a previous job, or maybe they had some money from a parent that died. And so it's very hard to see the point to stop because they still have some money. And so are you just going to keep going until you've got absolutely no money left and stop? I think the answer to this question depends on the culture or the country that you live in. Because I think, particularly in the US, you don't stop because you work hard, because anyone can make their dream come true. But then what happens is, 80% of businesses fail within their first year. I saw an article last week that said that has now gone up to 87% in the last year or two. And why is that? Well, I think there are a lot more businesses, and for the last 12 months, there's been less investments happening. There's been less capital available. So there's that. That's a huge major factor in it. But either, if you're not one of those people that's getting investment or not getting clients, it's because you haven't got the right product. Like it's not a good product, or you've not got the correct product. You're not aligning it with the problems that are actually out there. I will happily say that the biggest piece of advice I give across the board to companies is, you're telling me what the solution is, you haven't told me what the problems are. Because a lot of times they've created a solution maybe because they felt they saw a problem, but they haven't actually done enough market research. They haven't actually checked enough to make sure there's a big enough market for this thing. And that's part of the communication. It's understanding the audience. It's being curious as to what's out there and what they need. I won't tell you exactly what it is, but we're building another business. We're building a product. And even as a coach, I had a coach say to me yesterday, what exactly is the market? What exactly are the people that will put their hand into their pocket and pay for it? And I ask that question to my clients all of the time, but I needed somebody to ask me that question because I hadn't gotten there by myself. And I thought, well, I think I know the market. But when I was really challenged, I then thought, right, we do need to pivot this slightly. And that's the importance of coaching, because we're in the weeds so much of trying to run our business and look after our families and just live through each day, that sometimes we don't ask ourselves the questions to get to the answers. And a coach will ask you those questions so that you find those answers. And it has to be built into the foundation of your business in the early days.
Okay, as a coaching expert, I would like to have your take on the following. And there is a statement that everyone that goes into the startup has a problem with authority. Is that your experience as well? That most of the startup founders have huge problem with authorities, and that is also why they don't want to have a coach as an accountability partner that would tell them what you just explained. Maybe your product is not a good market fit, or you have to adapt it a bit.
So I've had the luxury, I guess, of working with a lot of really good startups. And so I've met startups that really have that issue with authority, definitely. But if I were to guess right now, I would say maybe 30% of the startups I've met with. I know lots of startups that it's not because they have a problem with authority, it's because they have a problem with the status quo. They get so frustrated with the fact that they can see the world in a way that other people can't. They're like, this needs to be put together with this, and no one else is doing it. Or somebody else tried to do it, but they're doing it in a shitty way. Or this person's doing it in another bad way. So actually, I just need to build it. I just need to make it happen. Sometimes I meet founders who there's no passion or drive. They've just seen an opportunity in the market. And those founders, on the whole, struggle because there's no motivation. They don't understand the market. They're just chasing the money. And I would say, if you then look at those founders, there's a much higher percentage of those founders who struggle with authority as well.
Okay. And now, before we close, I would like to ask you another favor. Can you share some tip that you think our listeners would benefit of, or even a trade secret from your coaching practice that is not known, but our listeners should know about it, and that they should, if they know about it, they will easily go for a coach or therapy?
Yeah. I'm going to give two tips, and I'm going to package it into one thing. I'm going to package it into be curious. And we're going to explain this more. So if you're pitching or you're presenting to a prospect client or to an investor, don't just go in with the pitch that you need or even that your customer needs. But now you're pitching to a new audience, and you need to understand what do they need. So be curious, do your research beforehand, and then also in the beginning of the meeting, before you give your pitch, ask them some questions. Because the more you learn about them and about what they need, the better you can align your pitch. Because we are all self-motivated at our core, even the really nice people. And so if we can receive a pitch or a presentation in the way that we want to receive it, we will just hear more of it. Our brain, our ears will receive more of it. So try to align that with what other people want. The other part of that is get really curious in your conversations. So before the pitch, after the pitch, in networking events, in emails, try to avoid asking a question that's getting to the end result that you want to get to. So in the UK, we have a way of asking questions, which is, do you not think? Do you not think that the world really needs this product right now? It's not a question. You've just told me, and you're not curious to know what I think. You're not curious to know what my clients think. You're just pushing this hard sell. And you might be a great salesperson in terms of trying to show me all the good things, but you're not a great salesperson if you can't like connect with another human being. So that curiosity, that genuine want to get to know somebody is what will help improve that connection. And even if they don't buy your product or invest in your product, that connection often means that actually they recommend you to somebody else. Or when you build your next startup, then they're really interested because they liked you all along. They just didn't like the product. So these relationships, they stay around if you make genuine connections, and you can only make those genuine connections if you're curious in the first place.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Mike, please share where our audience can reach you.
So our website is forefront-coaching.com. So forefront-coaching.com. I'm on LinkedIn. So my surname is Lane Evans. Obviously, you'll see it on the podcast. So I'm the only Mike Lane Evans. So if you search me, you will find me on LinkedIn. And for those who are not sure about coaching, they're scared of coaching, they're not sure it's worth the money, we're not going to try and push things on you. Come check out the LinkedIn page. We put a lot of content out there for free. We've only recently started doing it about 4 weeks ago. There's a lot more to come. And so if you can't afford it or you're too scared at this stage to come and have coaching, that's okay. So take as much of our content as you want and just be a part of the community, even if it's from a distance.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for all these insights, and thank you for being my guest tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Faleskini, for this outstanding podcast. And thank you for listening to the Ask Faleskini podcast until the end. Mr. Faleskini would love to hear your feedback in the comments. And don't forget, if you want to know, ask Faleskini or listen to the Ask Faleskini podcast. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.